Welcome, everyone. I'm John Ryan of SportsMemo.com, and this is, of course, the Monday edition, March 21st, 2022, of the NBA Triple Double Show, presented to you by the Predictive Playbook and also sponsored by SportsMemo.com. And, of course, I have Ronald Cabang on this show, which I always do. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday is the tentative schedule to have Kevin Broadus on, with Wednesday being all three of us. We're all running pretty hot in the NBA. Ronald and I, as you can see by the graphic scrolling down below here, running second and third. Behind that, Teddy Covers of Wager Talk, but he's also on SportsMemo.com. So that's pretty good company that we're with, and we've been on that list for several weeks now, Ronald. So I guess kudos to both of us. And we're going to get started here right away with the Toronto Bulls, who are coming off that big win in Philadelphia, which kind of surprised me. And we're going to be talking about that Philadelphia team later in the show. But they're coming off that upset win on the road, now away. And they are actually 5-1 straight up and against the spread, and 4-2 over this season on back-to-back road games. Since 2019, when they're playing the second of back-to-back road games, they're 11-10 straight up. 13-8 against the spread, 9-12 over under. And when Price is a dog, Ronald, in the second of back-to-back road games, 6-8 straight up, but 9-5 against the number for 64% with an even 7-7 over under. Tell me, where you're putting your money here, and more importantly, does this trend that Miami has in place, does that continue against the Bulls?
You're talking about the Raptors, right? The Raptors against the Bulls.
Raptors. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, it's tough. I know. Like some of the trends that you mentioned, second game of back-to-back road to road games, they've been doing pretty well. But this spot specifically, coming off an outright win over the Sixers, they also have a key game against the Cavs up next here. Bulls. This is a revenge spot for them. They're on a 3-game losing streak. Both last 2 games, actually, I think they lost by double digits. And they're rested. They have a lot more rest than this Raptors team right here. I know as far as trends go that we can see support on both sides here. The Raptors 8-2 against the spread as road dogs in conference games, 18-7 against the spread from road to road. And the Bulls here, you have some backup for them as well, 10-3 against the spread against opponents on second game of back-to-back. So that kind of goes against how well the Raptors do on those back-to-back games. And then you have the 11-5 against the spread as home favorites in conference games. They get a little bit of help here with Patrick Williams coming back after a long stint on the injury list. I don't know how many minutes he's going to play, but having another big for the Bulls is actually pretty huge because they're guard heavy. They had DeMar DeRozan playing power forward for a while, so Patrick Williams playing 20 minutes, that's going to be a boost for them. I think from my perspective here, that I can see a bit of a letdown on the Raptors spot here, mainly due to the schedule spot, right? Third game in 4 nights, again, second game of back-to-back. I think we need to double check to make sure come back to this game later to see if Van Vliet actually plays. I know Anunoby and Flynn are out. For the Bulls, I mentioned Patrick Williams is back, and then Lonzo Ball is still out. Caruso now has a few games under his belt, so hopefully that kind of gets him back into in top playing shape and gives them another boost defensively for them here. For me, I know trend wise, we're getting support on both sides. But as far as scheduling here, I think the Bulls have a slight advantage. I would lean towards the Bulls in this one.
Yeah, I would too. I think the rest factor is huge, especially in the second half of the season. And sometimes these trends, Ron, we always emphasize, just because it's 5-1 in favor of the Raptors doesn't mean it's going to go 10-2. There is a regression. The higher that number goes, 7-1, 8-1, the more probability you're going to have a clunker somewhere along the line. And if they were ever going to have a clunker, I guess it would be this matchup. I'm looking at the injury list here for Chicago and Toronto, and I don't see anything of note. So you mentioned Van Vliet being possibly questionable. I have no information to provide to support one way or the other, but we definitely need to check that as we get closer to game time for sure. Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to the next game, and this is the Boston versus OKC, and not many people would know, especially the casual bettor, that since game number 41, which marks the halfway point of the regular season, the Boston Celtics are second best record only to the Phoenix Suns. And they've been playing remarkably well. I, too, think they are a team flying under the radar, mainly because they've climbed from near the abyss, just a few games over 500 at the halfway point, to now being the fourth seed in the Eastern Conference. Mm-hmm. But now I wonder, and my question to you, has the market overvalued the Celtics? Because this is the greatest favorite they have been on the road and the second highest favorite they've been in the entire season. They've only been a double-digit favorite on 7 different occasions. 4 of those games, Rob, were against the Detroit Pistons. So, that makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah. But I'm just wondering if this 13.5 point line, especially if it gets up near 14.5, where I think it's going to go, do you have any lean maybe on the Thunder perhaps, or is Boston just going to blow them off the court?
Yeah, this is tough because obviously, like you mentioned, the Celtics are playing really well right now as a team. They have a lot of momentum on their side. And so to that note, it's hard to come into a game motivated against a Thunder team, especially if SGA is out, right? Giddey is already out. SGA favors and Kenrich Williams are game time decision for them. Celtics are completely healthy. This is a second game of back-to-back road-to-road games, third game in 4 nights. Even last game of a 4-game road trip, and they won 8 of their last 9. So a lot of momentum on their side, but there could be some fatigue here. They also have a tough schedule coming up. They got the Jazz, Wolves, Raptors, and Heat coming up next. And like you mentioned, this is they're not a double-digit favorite, too much this season, specifically on the road. They're only 2-5 against the spread as double-digit favorites this season, and they scored 120 plus in their previous game, and they do have letdowns. They're 4-9-2 against the spread after scoring 120 plus points, averaging 110 points in those games. So that's about a 15 game sample size there, where you could see there's a dip in scoring right after they have a huge outburst. On the Thunder side, they've been a covering machine, throughout the whole season. You can find a lot of ways that we can support a Thunder play here. I know they've lost 9 straight here. This is also a second game of back-to-back. But for them, they're 18-8 against the spread as double-digit dogs, 8-1 against the spread against opponents, and second game of back-to-backs. They're averaging 107 points per game in those situations, and they're allowing 106 in those games. So in those spots here, they're also 11-2 after allowing less than 100 points. So there's a lot of support here on the Thunder, and some situations where we would probably want to fade the Celtics here. I think at this point at 14.5, I think it is. This might be a spot where we could just say, well, maybe this is just too many points here for this spot specifically for the Celtics to cover. And they just do enough just to win, get by, get ready for the upcoming games against the Jazz and Wolves, Raptors, and Heat. So for me, I would lean towards the Thunder in this spot.
Yeah, and I lean that way too. I'm thinking in-game live betting too, Ronald, with maybe putting 50% of my normal bet size down on the Thunder before the tip-off. And then a lot of times with these elite teams, and I'm putting Boston in that category, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. When they are tired and they know they have that tough schedule that you mentioned, it seems there's a tendency to want to take the losing record team and get ahead and take any motivation they may have for an upset. And if that happens, then you might be able to get the Thunder all the way up at like 18.5, 19.5. That's where I would definitely add the other half. Or you could simply just use pizza money and see if it gets to 19.5 and just do a pizza money bet on the Thunder at 19.5. But volatility in this game will be very high. Yeah. So I think it's likely you're going to get that kind of line, 18.5, 19.5. Good stuff. All right, third and final game. The Sixers are starting to be my magnet now instead of the Lakers, Ronald. I'm like, what the heck is going on now in Philly? Because they seem to be the complete polar opposite team that we saw just a few weeks ago. And, they really did not play well. I was going to say a different term, but I realized we're on the air here. But it was shocking the way Toronto just shut them down. And really, what I was looking at this morning when I watched the abridged version of it
Yeah.
is that it seemed like Toronto did a great job with the inside-outside game of Harden and Embiid. And my question in this matchup is simply back-to-back nights. Miami is now the favorite. Philly's a home dog. Do you think there's like possibly the teams in the Eastern Conference especially have figured out how to defend this new dynamic duo of Harden and Embiid?
It's a tough call because I think if everyone had the same situation, the Sixers would be a great team, right? Like, but to me, they've had a tough schedule. I think Sixers so this is, obviously this is a battle between 1 and 3 in the East. Both teams top 10 in defensive rating last 5 games, both bottom 10 in offensive rating last 5 games, and Sixers, they play a slow pace, as you know. So to me, those rankings there, just based on current form, that's a lean towards the under off the bat. Not even looking at the total or whatever it may be. It's a key game, playoff type atmosphere. You know you're going to bring defense, especially with a Heat team here, especially if Butler plays. That to me, that's almost a given that is going to be a playoff atmosphere type game. And with that being said, that means the Sixers were probably looking ahead to this game, and then they did beat the Mavs by 10 points, right? Right before this Raptors game as well. So you could technically say this might have been a sandwich spot for them where they did overlook the Raptors, and the Raptors took advantage of that. They gained some momentum in the middle of the game, and they just took advantage of the Sixers not really being there fully 100% mentally into that game. So, yesterday could have been a letdown spot for them. Obviously a second game back-to-back. They wanted to make sure that they get some rest for this key game here against the Heat. So, I maybe looking back, I wish I took that game on the Raptors. I did lean towards them, but I didn't eventually take that game. But it makes more sense now, looking back, that they did look ahead to this game. The Heat, they're on a small 2-game win streak. But to be honest, their last 4 games that were against the last 4 wins were against the Rockets, shorthanded Cavs and Pistons and Thunder. So there's really nothing to scream about there. Sixers, this is a 17-point revenge game for them. So last time they played, they lost by 17 points. This is schedule-wise, 3rd game in 4 nights, 2nd game back-to-back. Like we talked about, last lost outright to the Raptors. So to me, the scheduling is still really off for the Sixers here. And a lot of signs point toward the Heat. But in a revenge spot, and they looked ahead to this game, I really don't know where the Sixers are with their headspace here. To me, the safer play would be the under, and I would just stay away from the side. This is such a key game. Both teams are going to play super hard. I don't know which way to lean towards the side, but Thunder is a look for me.
Yeah, I think I'm leaning the
under.
Well.
Sorry.
Right. Yeah, it rhymes with thunder. It's okay. Field goal percentage, Miami is 14th in the league at 46.22%. And when Philadelphia has been playing against a team making 46% or more of their shots, 21-9 under the total this season. So I definitely lean with you on the under. Let's move on to our most difficult part of this show, Ronald, identifying our best bet or bets. And I'll start off with you.
Yeah. All right. So what we talked about was the under, right, in that last game, Heat Sixers. Yep. We talked about the Bulls. I talked about the Bulls here.
Minus the 4.
The Bulls. Yep. And a lean towards the Thunder as well. This is a tough call for me. I would. Let's say. I would say a stronger lean towards the under here with the Heat and Sixers. And also, I do like the Thunder here if it continues going up. If we can get another point at like 15.5, I would probably take the Thunder in that position. It's 14.5 now. If SGA is called out, we could probably see another point or two towards the Thunder here. I would say that the Sixers Sixers game under would probably be the best one for me.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I agree with you across the board on all three of those selections. I also like the Thunder. And for those that don't, are scared to death of betting a team that is as bad as the Thunder, if I remember right, they've lost 9 in a row, Ronald, 9 of the last 10, but they've covered the spread in 7 of them.
Yep. They're a covering machine.
They are a covering ATM machine, is exactly right. And I do kind of like my strategy here, 50% pre-flop. Or you just bag the pre-flop, and if you get 19.5, nail it. You're getting 5 more points than the current line. And maybe that's the way to go for the show on that particular matchup. And I do like the under in the Sixers game. I think there's, with the fatigue factor, and we're in the late in the second half of the season, I think this game will be very physical. If the refs let them play, then it's definitely going to go under the total of 215 points. So that's great stuff, Ronald. Our show, I just love it more and more every single time we do it. Thanks to everyone for watching. Make sure you ring the bell and subscribe to the SportsMemo TV channel so you get every single show that we do. We're going to be starting Major League Baseball pretty soon here. And needless to say, Philadelphia has done a remarkable job in the free agency market. And they, I'm going to have to study it, Ronald, and you will too.
Yeah.
They might be a contender right now for the pennant in the National League with those 3 huge bats in the outfield.
Yeah.
But for the NBA show, this is it for today. And our next edition is tomorrow of the NBA Triple Double. So until then, always remember, bet with your head, never over it, and may all the wins continue to be yours. We'll see you again tomorrow.